I could introduce my family now. They're like basically all here. Okay. That's my brother Cameron. This is the guy behind the camera on all the videos. He's like, I'm the hand, he's the brain. If it wasn't for him, I would be drawing in obscurity by myself and no one would see it. That is his beautiful girlfriend, Jessie, who also helps out the studio and also helps run my mom's shop, I Heart Tula Pink, and does her videos. This is my mom, Kat, the owner of I Heart Tula Pink, and also, you know, my mom. So like the owner of my life. And then right next to her is my favorite aunt. This isn't on video yet, right? My Aunt Marilyn, who is actually who I got into quilting with. We all made the same, remember that 30s quilt that we all made together? And her daughter Sandy, my cousin, the three of us. So her daughter Sandy has a habit of buying like 10 times more fabric than she needs for every project. So all three of us made the same queen size quilt out of what she bought for just her project. Okay, 5 seconds. 25, okay. So she had bought all this fabric. And I had been quilting before, but I had put it away because I had like gone to college and you know, you get busy. And so that's what sort of brought me back into it, was all of us making that quilt together. We're live. This feels like a sitcom, like I have a live studio audience, and I'm suddenly feeling like I should have prepared more. So I'm just going to introduce myself, yeah? I mean, I know myself the best. I'm probably the best person to do it. I'm Tula Pink. Hello. So fun fact is that basically Missouri Star Quilt Company is my local quilt shop. So lucky me. I live about, right? I live about 40 minutes down the road, which, you know, in Missouri time is in the neighborhood. So like I do that just to go to Starbucks. It's not a big deal. But yeah, so this is basically my local quilt shop. So I thought, what a good place to do a fun, live, just sort of impromptu thing. So our plan for today, whatever that is I brought some of my favorite quilts to show, some of my more recent quilts to show, but also we're going to just do sort of a question and answer. We have some questions coming in off the internet. Off the magical, scary, scary interwebs, and then we have people here. So, but I thought just for a warm up, because I know it's like a little scary to start just like randomly firing questions, I brought just a couple quilts I want to talk about. So the first one, actually, if Cam and Jessie, so some of them are my favorites, some of them are just more recent. This is, yeah, you got the top. So this is, did I say who I was? I'm Tula Pink, we're live, yeah, okay. So you can tell I'm not a planner if we've caught up on that yet. So this is one of my more recent favorite quilts I've done. And I got the idea for this out of a book of antique quilts where they had put the quilt label on the border of the quilt instead of a little thing on the back that's like hard to see. They put all the quilt label information actually big and made it incorporated into the quilt. So I really wanted to do something like that. So I made this in 22. So it says Tula Pink 2022 at the bottom. And then it says St. Joseph, Missouri, which is where I live. Don't come to my house. And then the other side says La Crosse, Wisconsin. So I made the quilt half in La Crosse and half at home. So I put the two places I made the quilt. And then along the top, if you can see that, which will be hard to see on camera, I wanted to put the quilter in because I designed the quilt, made the quilt, designed the fabric, kind of did everything. But Angela also helped by doing just some casual quilting that's super epic. But Angela Walters, my very, very, very good friend and long arm quilter, did the quilting, and instead of appliquing it across the top, since she was the quilter, I had her quilt her name in along the top. And it's sort of hard to see, but can we like fold the top down so you can sort of see that? Can you kind of see it? You can see it in person. You can kind of see it on there? Cool. But so I just used all of my prints, and it, like, basically what this quilt is made out of is whenever I fussy cut things, I leave a lot of things unused. And so I made the blocks really small so that I could fussy cut some of the little extras out of it. And so every block is completely different. And that one doesn't have a name because I just made it. I don't name things unless like I need other people to talk about it. Does that make sense? It's hard to have a conversation about that one quilt, that one that you made that time with the thing and the thing. So we have to give it a name. I think purple's at the top of that one. So this is a quilt that I made out of a collection I did not too long ago called Everglow, which was an all sort of neons collection. And so this is something that I do in quilts that's like you're sort of immediately taught not to do, but I can't help myself because I like to group things in likes. But like, you know, you're told when you make a block, like if you have 2 blue blocks, balance them out and spread them out. And I always put them right on top of each other. Like I cannot help myself. The rainbow reigns over balance. And I always think of my quilts as like flat objects rather than like something that you can just see a part of and get the whole vision. Like I intend for everybody to see the entire thing the whole time. So, so this was a quilt I made out of Everglow using all the dots, the stripes with the animals in the center. And then I had an uneven amount of blocks, so I just used all the fabrics in the very center block because Jen Kingwell, who's a good dear friend of mine, has this great saying that like if 50 fabrics look good in a quilt, then wouldn't 100 look better? I fully agree. I fully agree. I will take that laugh even though it's Jen's saying. And then I brought a couple of, and we'll leave these all up here if anybody wants to come up and look at them after. All of these quilts, I believe every single one of them is quilted by Angela Walters. She does pretty much, yes, we can clap for her. Thank you. So this is one of my newest collections that's in stores called Besties, and I can tell by some of your clothing that you've seen it. But so this collection was a fabric collection that was all designed around house pets. Like that was, so it's kind of funny. Their arms are gonna get tired, but that's okay. You just rest when you need to. So it's kind of funny. I've always had a couple of things that I said I would never, ever, ever do in fabric, and one of them is pets. Because people are far too particular about their pets. Like I designed a fabric with 7 different dog breeds in it, and I've got about 130 people who are upset because their dog's not in it. Which is why I said I'd never do it, but I did it anyway, because the second I say I'll never do something, you can pretty much count on me actually doing it at some point. But so I decided to just like blow the house pets thing, like clear the board. I needed to get it out of my brain. So this one is all about dogs and cats and hamsters and goldfish. And then one of my favorite pieces is in the line of these little best friend charms. You know when you were a kid and you'd have a best friend charm and you give 1/2 to your best friend and see like bee fry or street ends, you know, depending on which half you got. And then that goes really big on the wide backing. I feel like this gives really like quilty Versace vibes was sort of what I was aiming at here. There's one on the bottom. That's my favorite one. Don't forget her. Okay, so while you're watching them struggle with these quilts, let me explain why they're struggling with these quilts. So most of my quilts are seen in trade shows or like as sort of fabric sales materials. So they're mostly seen flat. And because of that, because I want you to be able to see the quilting even in photos, Angela double bats all my quilts. So that the quilting is puffier, so that, because typically in a traditionally batted quilt, wadding for the Australians, I learned that when I was there. You can't see the quilting in photos. You can see it in real life, but not in photos. So for years, Angela and I have been double batting all of the quilts. So they're extraordinarily stiff and extraordinarily heavy because of that. But so this was one of my favorite quilts I made, just because it felt more lifelike. I'm always looking for an alternative background sashing idea to white. I mean, I love a quilt that's sashed in and set in white. I do it all the time. Obviously, I love it. It's super clean and crisp and pretty. But every once in a while, it's just like, I need to do something different, right? And so on this one, I actually used the neon dot from Everglow to sash it. And I thought it made the whole quilt look like it was in an aquarium. And it has the fish around the outside, the goldfish around the outside. And then these are sort of, this little print on the outside is sort of based on those like weird plastic flowers that they put in fish tanks. You know? And so I thought it gave like a real fish tank, like a fish tank that needs like a little bit of cleaning vibe. And I was really pleased with that effect. And I have some other quilts here up on the wall, but I would really like to get to your questions and not run out of time, because I can sit here and talk about myself all day, because like this is the only time anyone's actually interested in, like when I go home, like they really don't care what I think or feel or anything, and don't think I'm funny, so thanks for the laughs. So I'd really just love to answer your questions. And we had one over here. And that was, where do you get your inspiration? Which is like the craziest question ever, in all reality, because I kind of like to describe it like this. I don't really get my inspiration from anywhere. It's just sort of the way my brain works. So like, why is my accountant hopefully good at math? You know, like, hopefully they are. I trust that she is. And the IRS isn't knocking down my door, so I think she is. But it's just like, it's sort of, creativity for me is an ongoing dialogue that never ends. It's just constant. So it's just a constant conversation that's going on in my head, and one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, which ends up in a final form in some sort of fabric line or quilt or something. I mean, that's where I really focus any creative energy I have on, is really fabric and quilting. I love it more than anything on planet Earth. I don't love anything more, including humans. Sorry, everyone. But it's really all I think about. Unless someone's in like an immediate crisis, I am thinking about fabric. But I would describe it as more of an ongoing dialogue. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to sort of, I was never given creative limitations growing up. You know, like it was always really encouraged. I think my parents identified sort of a passion in me really early, and never sort of put up barriers on it. And I think that's a lot of the reason that I can do what I do today. I would say the hardest part about being inspired is that I have to do it on a deadline. And even that is something that's become a muscle that I've trained, that I can actually do sort of on cue. And part of that is because I'm okay with failing. I'm okay with having a bad idea. Like, I'm gonna have way more bad ideas than good ideas. So I'm not hard on myself when I'm having bad ideas. Like, I always like to say, like, one of the first things I do when I buy a new sketchbook is I take a big fat marker and I scribble on the first page, because anything I do after that will be better. So I've like taken because a pristine sketchbook is a really intimidating thing. So I've got to like ruin it right away, so that it's like, I'm better than you and I can conquer you because I already messed you up. Right?
So we do have some questions coming in
Okay.
from the online audience as
Okay.
well. Marianne would like to know, how did you get started in fabric design?
How did I get started in fabric design? Well, I got started, sort of my origin story, if you will, is that I actually had been quilting. I started quilting when I was about 12. Not well, obviously. But I got a sewing machine from my grandma kind of out of nowhere. I don't come from a long line of quilters. Like everyone in my family pretty much quilts now, but it's a side effect of me sort of making everyone do it. But my grandma gave me a sewing machine because I was artistic and she just wanted to see what I would do with it. And after like systematically destroying my mom's house for about a month, like ripping fabric off of the dining room chairs, that stuff comes off so easy. You know, cutting holes in curtains in my room, stuff like that. She goes, we're gonna go to a fabric store. It just so happened to be a quilt shop. Like we didn't know there were types of fabric stores yet. And it just happened to be a quilt shop. I fell in love with all the colors, all tidy along the wall, sort of all in order and organized, because I do have like a highly organized side of my brain that lays pretty dormant most of the time, but comes up now and again. And so I just started making quilts, but I didn't really know how to finish the quilts. Like I didn't know how to bind. Okay, so I took a class. My mom signed me up for a 3-part quilting class at this little tiny, tiny shop. And after the very first class, I was the youngest person in the class by about 40 years. And after the first class, the teacher politely asked my mom never to bring me back because I was like misusing rotary cutters and almost sewed my finger 8 times and all this stuff. So I only knew how to do the first part of the first class, which was 4 patches. Man, did I make 4 patches. So many 4 I could make a 4 patch out of anything. But yeah, so I was a quilter, and then one day I was in this amazing shop in Carpinteria, California. I'm from California originally, by the way. That's why I was in Carpinteria, California. And I was in this little shop, and I walked into this store, and this was like the true moment that I feel like my career began. I walked into a store, and I was used to seeing all the regular stuff. There were like 30s reproductions and batiks and Civil War reproductions and, you know, all these things that I was normally buying, bleaching down, over dyeing, trying to make it into something that I was attracted to more. I mean, it was beautiful fabric, but I wanted brighter colors. And I walked into this store one day, and there was a huge display of these 2 new designers, Kay Fassett and Amy Butler. And I was like, where's my mom? How old was I? Like 18, 17, I don't know, 20, I don't know, whatever it was. I don't need you to know how old I am. Anyway, and there was a huge display in the middle of the shop, and I had never seen anything like that before. Like I had never seen fabric like that before. It was huge, it was bright, it was exuberant. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was that this was fabric that was so clearly designed by an individual. This came from one person's mind, and one person's mind alone. This wasn't a reproduction. This wasn't some sort of something that was designed to look like something else. This was a whole complete vision from a single mind of an artist. And that was the first time it ever occurred to me that someone was designing fabric. Because I just didn't think about it before, because so much of it was reproduction. It was gorgeous, but it was, you know, it was all made to look like something else, something older, something from a different period. And I think the like rage at the time that was like super edgy and modern was shabby chic, which was reproduction of period era fabric. So that's what I was used to seeing. So that's what I thought fabric was. It was just a company that reproduced things. And so when I saw this, I was like, wait, somebody has this job, and I'm gonna have it too. And I started working on my first fabric collection just in my house. I was actually renting a room from my Aunt Marilyn at the time, because she was nice enough to rent me a room. And I just sat at my little desk that my dad made me, and I drew a fabric line. and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know who to show it to. I didn't know how the industry worked. And at that time, my mom had opened a quilt shop. And so she's like, well, you're gonna send it in. You're gonna send it into a company and see what they say. And I was like, yeah, I'll take some feedback. Like art directors are just sitting around with like nothing to do but give me feedback on what I'm doing. So my mom hounded all of her sales reps for contact info for their art directors, and I just started sending it off. I'm like, what do you think? Do you have any feedback for me? And that collection ended up in two hands, Free Spirit and Moda Fabrics, and it was in production within 36 hours of that email being opened, and it was crazy, and I've been a fabric designer ever since. That was a pretty long story to an early question.
Got another question from the audience.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Miller. I live here in Missouri. I was wondering how long it takes you to design a collection, like typically.
How long does it take me to design a collection? That is a super good question, and one I would like to know because I haven't made a deadline on time in about 4 years. But no, it used to be different. If you've been with me for a while, you may have seen that my fabrics have gotten more and more and more detailed and complicated, which equals taking more and more and more time. When I first started out, it would take me about 6 to 8 weeks to design a fabric collection. It now takes me about 5 months and I'm talking every day. So I keep really strict studio hours. You have to when you work for yourself, right? And when there's nobody there telling you what to do. So I'm incredibly disciplined in my studio. But yeah, I would say 4 to 5 months is a pretty round amount of time for me to draw it, redraft it digitally, do all the color. If I spend about 2.5 to 3 months drawing, I spend about a month to 2 months on color alone. So by the time you get a 24-piece collection, I've probably colored it 110 different ways and just end up with just, there's a lot of what goes in. How does this relate back to the last collection? How is this gonna relate to the next collection? Because I already kind of know what that is. And, like, how does this work in with everything else? And, so and by the way, every single time I release a fabric collection, I think I've done something I've never done before, and then it perfectly matches my last collection. So it's a little tidbit. Does that answer your question, though? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joni Doherty, and I'm from Jerseyville, Illinois, and I'm a big fan. I know you and Cameron are into cars because of your hardware finish and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to know, like, what's your favorite kind of car that you're driving or racing? I think you guys do some stuff with that. I'd love to know more about that.
So the question was, that we're really into cars, which we are. I would say that that's more of a Cameron question than a me question. I just like to go hang out by the track and drink lemonade and watch him do cool stuff in cars and pretend like I had a part in it. Yeah, no, we are into cars. I mean, what do we say about this? I don't want to mess it up for you. Yeah, we're into BMWs, and he builds drift cars, drift racing. And he's really good at it. And because he's worked so much on cars, he can now fix stuff around my house, which I'm abusing relentlessly. Any more?
Hi, my name's Melissa, and
Hi,
my
Melissa.
question is, hi. First of all, you wear really cool, funky clothes.
Oh, I do?
Yes.
I wear really cool, funky clothes.
Have you thought about designing apparel fabrics?
Have I thought about designing apparel fabrics?
And when in 36 hours do we expect it?
And can we expect it in 36 hours? Funny enough, no. I don't have any plans to do apparel fabrics at the moment because I don't actually make clothes personally. So a big part of what I do is if I put something out, I like to know everything about that thing. And I don't make clothes, not that I never will, but no part of me wants to measure any part of this for fun. which is really why I stay away from making clothes. But I like to sew things onto clothes. Like this is from Old Navy with a whole bunch of patches sewn on it. No, I don't have, to answer your question, I don't have any plans to make apparel fabrics, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. I just have to get into it.
Hey, Katrina from Rogers, Arkansas. My question goes along with that one. Any chance we'll get your designs on other products?
Any chance you'll get my
Like
designs on other products?
Stickers,
Like
scrapbook paper. I would love vinyl to make bags.
vinyl to make, I did vinyl once. So the question was, will I be doing other types of fabrics? We just got into Minky recently, which has been pretty fun, which will be coming out with Tabby Road Deja Vu in the summer. Weird time for Minky, but we thought like cats are furry and the fabric is furry. That was like the whole concept behind that, just so you know. It was very, very deep. But I will go into other products, maybe. I got into designing fabric because I love fabric. And there's just nothing else. I don't love dishes as much as I love fabric. And really, like, I don't just love fabric. I love quilting. I love people who quilt. I love the community of quilting. Like, I am really 150% like all in on this particular community. It is my whole life. And I just don't know if wallpaper people are gonna be cool. You know?
So I do have a question from Dorothy online. She wants to know, what is your process? Do you hand draw your designs or do you do them digitally?
What is my process? My process is 100% hand-drawn. I draw every single line by hand, in pencil, on paper, for months. I do all of my repeats and engineering of the print on paper, by hand, super old school. I taught myself how to design fabric and construct repeats from a book I got at the library about William Morris. Yes, love. So that's my favorite. My tattoos are actually all William Morris. But the reason I picked up his particular book is because it was the only book in the textile section where they showed the process drawings. So through looking at William Morris's process drawings, I could figure out how it was he was constructing the repeats and making things look seamless and not just stamped on. Like probably one of the hardest prints I've ever designed is actually that best friends chain that's infinite, that never ends. That was no joke. That took like 4 weeks to figure out. So, and that's the interesting thing about designing fabric is there's no edges. So like if I draw a picture, there's edges, right? There's the ends of the paper. Fabric doesn't have any edges. It repeats infinitely in every direction. So it's a completely different sort of approach. So I do all of that on paper. Once I have the drawing set and I think it's gonna work, I scan it into my computer and I redraft it line by painstaking line in Adobe Illustrator, which is a drawing program. And I try to trace my pencil line as exactly as possible. I try not to clean anything up. I try not to fix anything. I want as much of my hand present in the end as possible. So I do all my own production work, which is not super common in fabric design. So like when I send stuff in to the mill, it's almost completely ready to print. Because I come from a graphic design background, so that's how I know. I like control also. But yeah, so that's pretty much my process.
Hi, Dawn from Smithville, Missouri.
Hi, Dawn.
So we've talked a little bit about your inspiration, your tattoos. I would love to know what artists, designers, tattoo artists you look at.
What artists, designers, tattoo artists do I look at? Well, William Morris I'm a big fan of. And tattoo artists, all of my tattoos are actually done by another free spirit designer. With the exception of my knuckles, I got those done really late at night. It was like not my best idea ever. But these were all planned, and these are all done by another free spirit designer named Rachel Hauer. And she's basically the only person that touches my body with ink and a needle anymore because she's a mad genius and I love her. And she actually, I don't really know what she's doing beforehand. I have a general idea, but she actually draws a lot of it like directly on my body. So I get to see it when it's done and hope it works out well. But as for other artists, designers, I mean, okay, this is gonna sound like super narcissistic. I don't really look around that much. I'm a huge fan of myself. A lot of my work is self-referential, but I kind of like, it was kind of back to that inspiration question we talked about in the beginning. I look around at the world and I see it the way I want to see it, not really the way it is. And that's what I draw. Like, I don't see why squirrels need to be brown. They'd be way cuter in pink, so that's what I do. I'm sort of, in my fabric, remaking the world the way I wish it looked, or the way it looks in my head, is kind of the main thing that I'm doing. I mean, oftentimes there's like direct inspiration, like my Alice in Wonderland collection obviously was inspired by Lewis Carroll, and things like that. But like a general collection, like Besties was inspired by my brother's dog, who I love more than people and less than fabric, but only by a little. And, you know, so it's, I'm trying to think of like, what do I look at? I look at a lot of old quilts, like antique quilts, like traditional patchwork quilting is what got me into this, and it's still my love. Like, I love traditional, like the old school traditional quilting. Like, drop me off at like a super old dated quilt show, and I will be there for days. Like, I love it.
Hi, Dorothy from Independence. I wanted to know how you got into English paper piecing, talking about old. How did you get into English paper piecing, and where do you get your ideas?
How did I get into English paper piecing, and where do I get my ideas for English paper piecing? I got into English paper piecing because it's like the most control you can have over fabric and needle and thread, and I love that. There's a joke in the studio that like tedium is my superpower. Like, the more sort of monotonous and tedious the thing is, the more I love it. And I actually at this point, so I hand piece every day for about 2 hours before I go to sleep. I can't actually sleep unless I do it. At this point, because I've been doing it so long, I went through a bout where I was having trouble sleeping, and my mom goes, well, what are you working on? And I was like, well, nothing. I finished that thing. She goes, well, I don't know, sew. I was like, oh my gosh. I sewed that night, slept like a baby. I can't sleep. It's like a meditation for me. I mean, I love machine sewing and sewing fast, but it's a different thing. I really love slow sewing. It just like calms my mind. It's almost like a meditation. It's a little bit like prayer, you know? It's like you can really stop and sort of think and see and feel, and it just really calms me down. I'm not a super calm person. What?
Where do you get your ideas?
Where do I get my ideas? I mean, the shapes just kind of fit together until they fit together, but mostly I start with a fabric. So I like to say that there's like two kinds of quilters in the world. There's fabric first quilters and pattern first quilters. So I'm a fabric first quilter. I start with the fabric, then I look for a pattern that suits it. One is not better than the other. They're equal in all ways. And then some people start with a pattern. They go, oh, I love this pattern. I'm going to go find fabrics to make this pattern with. I start with the fabric. So a lot of my English paper piecing projects are built on what is going to be best for this fabric. So like, for instance, this quilt here, the Tumbling Blocks quilt, what's this called? Tumbling Cosmos? I forget all names. I was taking all my solids, I wanted to make a quilt. So what I wanted was a color card for all my solids and true colors, my like fabrics that are always available. And I needed a personal internal color card for that. That was more than just like a printout of the colors. I needed like real fabrics, and I wanted to see how, like, a mental note of how they all went together. So that's what that is. That's a giant color card for me. And so I divided them all out. I saw how many lights, how many mediums, how many darks I had. And then obviously a tumbling block is the best way to show the light, the medium, dark of each color. So a lot of my quilts actually come from like a functional place for me. It functions as like an artifact.
My name is Tanya, and I'm from Baser, Kansas. And it sounds like a lot, you've self-taught quite a bit about the industry, but do you have any formal art education?
So the question is, it sounds like I've self-taught a lot, which I have in terms of quilting and fabric design and all that, but I do have a formal education. I have a bachelor's degree in graphic design and one in commercial illustration from Otis College of Art and Design. My mom tricked me into going to college. I didn't want to go, but she tricked me into it and then said, you have to get your driver's license because I'm not driving you to college. And I was like, ew. So I got my driver's license at 19 and then went to college. I intended to be very, very little in my life. So I saw like a really nice, easy, relaxing life for myself. So I went to college 4 years and ended up double majoring. It's a good thing I went to art school because it's probably the only school I could have got into with my GPA. You don't need to know this, but I graduated high school with this is for the mothers who think their kids aren't going to turn it around. I'm here to tell you that they can. So I graduated high school with a 1.2 GPA, like I think they let me out because they just didn't want me back. And then I was valedictorian of my college. So I think it was more an issue of interest. Because like math is boring, but making a dodecahedron out of foam core is not as boring. So I did really well in college, but bad in high school. So like if, troubled teens, they can turn it around. They will, I promise.
Hi, I'm Robin from Missouri.
Hi,
Do
Robin.
you ever have lines that have been disregarded by your...
Do I ever have lines that have been... Ooh, sassy question.
Yeah, when you...
Okay.
Well, when you send it in, they're like, no, we don't like this.
I thought you
or
meant
the
like
other
by the
question,
people.
too.
And I was like, well, yeah, like the whole first half of my career. But do I ever have lines that are disregarded or like sort of shut down, or they're saying like, I don't know about this? Yes. It happened once with the first company I was with. Wonderful company, amazing. I turned in a version of Parisville, and everybody thought it was way too weird and no one would buy it. And so I was like, okay. They're like, well, if you take this out and take this out, well, that was the whole line. I was like, I'll do something else. So in about 3 weeks, really quickly, I designed Plume and turned that in along with my resignation. Wonderful, wonderful company. This is not their fault. They were probably exactly right. Honestly, they were totally right at that time. And I took that collection because I really believed in it, and I thought it was maybe the coolest thing I'd ever done. And so I took that line and I took it to Free Spirit, and I said, who was initially showed some interest several years earlier, and I said, I have this collection, I really want to print it, I'm sort of a free agent right now, would you be interested in this? And they said, we'll print it, but we need 6 more prints, 10 more colors, and it was actually a super magical moment for me because it was the first time anybody had ever asked me to do more instead of less. So like my whole life, people had always said I was too much. I don't know where that comes from. But it was like, be less, do less, be quieter. And here I was in a professional conference room having somebody tell me to be more, do more, give more. And that really opened the floodgates for me. So yes, I have had a company turn down a line. and I'm super grateful for it, and I fully respect their decision to do so. It was the right decision at that time for them, so this isn't a criticism in any way. But it allowed me to sort of open up to something totally different. So that was like it was the saddest moment and then like the most pivotal moment in my career.
So we've got time for maybe just one or two more questions. From Nikki,
I told you I'm a talker.
From Nikki online, is there a craft or a skill that you wish you knew more about? Not just
oh my gosh, is there a craft or a skill I wish I knew more about? Yes, but I will not go down that road. And that is knitting, because I want to buy yarn so bad. It is so beautiful, but I know if I start knitting, whatever little part of a life I have left outside of this will be completely gone. So I cannot do it. But yes, I'm dying to be a knitter. Yeah, I know. I'm sure you will. My accountant already wants to know why I need 13 sewing machines. I don't think he's going to understand yarn.
I'm Zach from Atlanta.
Hi, Zach.
So you talked about good ideas, bad ideas, and I appreciate how much you love your mind and your work.
I do love my mind. Thank you for picking up on that.
You should. It's wonderful. But you mentioned bad ideas. Is there someone that you trust with your very personal ideas to give you feedback that you believe in?
Absolutely.
Or do you run that all yourself?
So the question is, I talked about bad ideas. I love my mind. Yes, thank you. Compliment, compliment, compliment. And then you said, is there somebody I trust to sort of bounce ideas off of? And that would be Cameron. So Cameron knows everything I do. And honestly, he helps me shape a lot of my collections. I mean, when I say I'm the hand, he's the brain, that's what I mean. So Cameron really gets to see everything I do as I'm doing it. And he's one of the few people that does, because he's there all the time. So it's a side effect of that. But also because he knows my work so completely, and he knows me so completely. So like he can tell when I'm phoning something in, and he can also he can see it in the bigger picture too. And so that's super helpful, because when I'm in the idea stage of something, that's a super vulnerable place to be, right? It's like, that's when I have my least amount of confidence. I mean, I sit down to start every collection, and this is a conversation we have every time. I'm like, it was a fluke. I can't do it anymore. I'm a fraud. And it was an 18-year fluke. It was just a mistake. I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. And he just sits there and just waits for me to get all the way through it. And, so, I mean, that's what's nice about working with a brother.
Hi, I'm Brenda from Minnesota.
Brenda. Hi.
Where do you see the future of quilting going? Are there any new fun techniques or products?
Where do I see the future of quilting going? This is a funny question for a several hundred-year-old craft. I don't know. What I see in the industry, I've been through a few cycles at this point. I've been designing fabric for about 18 years. And so it's like every sort of, and Jenny probably can attest to this as well, is everything goes through cycles. It's like English paper piecing was all the rage in the 80s. Then no one did it, and now it's all the rage again. So I don't know that it's necessarily about new as it is about people rediscovering techniques that we've forgotten about, I think is kind of what happens. There's only so many ways to sew a piece of fabric to another piece of fabric in reality, unless you start getting into art quilting. I'm talking very specifically about patchwork, which is what I do and what I know. And I think that quilting in and of itself, I think so much of it is about honoring the history of it. because it is something that's so uniquely ours. Like, as people, I don't mean like as Americans or as women or as anything. It's just like, it's a uniquely human craft because it's not just art and it's not just beauty. It has function. It's utilitarian. It keeps us warm. It uses excess materials. Like, if we think about all the ways that quilting has been used throughout history, like, it's really been present for so much of the human existence, which is, I think, what's so special about it.
Hi, I'm Amy from Louisiana.
Hi, yes, you are.
Do you share all of your quilts publicly, or do you like to keep some private?
Oh,
so they're like just for you?
That's a good question. Do I share all of my quilts publicly? No. So there's kind of like levels of quilts. There's quilts that are designed, like if a quilt is made primarily out of one fabric collection, it's designed to show you how the fabric works, right? So like a lot of the Besties quilts, like this is designed to show you how all the fabrics work together and give you ideas for how to use my fabrics and stuff. So that it has a very like sort of, like I still want to make something I love and I like, but it has a very commercial perspective, right? It's more of like an inspiration tool for other people. Then there's the quilts like the one with the applique around the borders and the tiny little stars. Twice a year, I go on sewing vacation with my two best friends, and our only rule for that trip is we're not allowed to commercialize anything we make there because we're all industry professionals. And so the second you make something that you think, oh, this would be great in a book or a pattern, you'll see it like slowly slide off the table and into a bag. Because if you commercialize something you make on that trip, you can't come next time. And yes, and I have quilts that I make that nobody ever sees that are just for me. That was the end of that.
That's the end of that. Well, Tula, it's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tula she has been a huge support to me in my life. I've called her on the phone several times. Yes, I'm old enough to be her mother, but she knows just the things to say to me. I want to share a quote with you, and it says, "I refuse to be less because you can't handle my more."
Yep, absolutely.
And I just love that. And when you were talking about that with people, I mean, that is just, and for creatives, you have to be so brave to give and to show and to put it out there. And that whole thought of you sitting with Cameron, and how sweet, Cameron, is it to be loved the way you're loved. I mean, that is really sweet to see siblings, that kind of relationship. But, you know, to see that, him sitting there and waiting through that. Natalie is a, fabulous, talented woman. And she said to me one day, "When do you stop feeling like a poser?" And I'm like, maybe you don't. You just keep doing it. You just keep doing it. You sit down and you put it out again, and you do it again, and a new line comes out, and you do it again, and a new pattern comes out. People are like, "How do you do this every Friday?" I'm the same as you. The brain doesn't shut off. It's just like those ideas. Like right now, I was looking for carpets for my back porch, and I'm making a rug. I mean, I'm making a quilt that looks like the carpet.
That's how it works.
The whole thing. Anyway, we just want to thank you so much for
coming.
Thank you for being a part of National Quilting Month and being here in Hamilton. We love it when you come over. And I guess that's it. So thank you, everybody, for coming as well. Thank you for your questions and taking the time. Bye, everybody.